Hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Recovery, the AA Big Book Solutions podcast. I'm Natalie here with
I'm
Michaelis,
Michaelis. I
and
feel like we're superheroes, right?
we are.
Yeah, that's what it felt like right there. I'm Natalie. I'm Michaelis. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
You look
I'll
like
shut
a
up. Go ahead.
superhero. Um,
Thanks.
so we're here today for our second episode of our Real Recovery podcast, season 1, and so if you guys missed the first podcast, we're here because we have found the solution as it's outlined in the big book, and we live this process. And the purpose of this podcast is kind of to just share our experience, strength, and hope, but not really in a traditional sense, but in the sense of how this big book study has changed our recovery and our lives. So we're going to be having different guests on. And since this, in my world, and this has all started with Michaelis, who has been the one to take me through this process, he is our first official guest. So we'll have,
Aww.
it's true. We'll have other
So cool.
guests on the show. I will be on next episode, and then we'll have other people on to share, their experience, strength, and hope with this specific big book study process. So I'm super excited to hear Michaelis's story, although I've heard it before. Um, so I guess that's all I've got to say. If you want to jump on in.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it brief. My story's not that interesting, but
It's super interesting.
come on. So basically, this is the deal. I got sober when I was 22 years old. Prior to that, I had absolutely no idea what Alcoholics Anonymous was. I think the only thing I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous was when I faked sick and I stayed home from school, and there was that daytime television, like Judge Wapner, People's Court and shit. Like there were these commercials, right? With these people holding a candle, and it had this really cheesy classical music in the background. And it would just, slowly go over all these different faces with these people holding a candle. And it was really solemn. And it was hi, my name is Bob and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, my name is Jane and I'm an alcoholic. And slowly would pan out, and they would all be in the shape of a triangle. And that's
really?
what
I've never seen that.
Yeah, totally. And that was an old school, Alcoholics Anonymous. If you have a drinking problem, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I did not know at all what it was. And what's funny is that when I was really high and working at this vegetarian restaurant in Brentwood called Avotra Sante, one of the waitresses there who got me the job, she was the aunt of my childhood best friend. She had I don't know, 10, 15 years sober at that time. She never said anything to me. And I would come into work sweating and kind of gray, this weird color, and talking a million miles per second. And she just watched me destroy myself. It was really funny. So I came into the process basically, and not the big book process, but the AA program through jail. I was one of those people that had to get the nudge from the judge and go to jail a bunch of times and get threatened with, 25 years to life in prison for a bunch of stupid shit that I did. And I was blessed enough to be able to get transferred from that situation to being introduced to the 12 steps through a treatment program that was in jail. And that program was the Impact program, which was actually an NA program at the time. And they had this jail called Biscaloo. I think it's in Wayside now, but Biscaloo is where they held this treatment in jail. It was awesome. And I was introduced to 12 steps. I was given a counselor. Basically, we did steps 1, 2, and 3 every single day. And that's kind of what I did for the 4 months while I was in there. And then I was directly discharged into a structured sober living in Century City, California. And the sober living was awesome. It was really challenging. It was really structured. It was kind of based on the old Synanon Tarzana Treatment Center, like, 80s, late 70s kind of attack therapy
What's
kind of situation. Man, Synanon was gnarly. All kinds of weird programs where, like they take a chair and they put you in the corner and you like face a wall. They put all these signs in front of you of your defects of character. And then everybody in the house like calls you on your shit and tells you what a piece of shit you are and why, like that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was gnarly. And, writing essays and doing chores and scrub downs and, 3-day groups and all kinds of just really intense stuff. And what's funny about it is that when my parents told me I was going to go to a sober living, my mom kind of described it as like, oh, it's just going to be like a frat house, but everyone's sober, it's going to be fun. And I remember like walking into this house. I just come straight from jail. And I sat down at dinner and I'd already met the manager because he picked me up from jail. And he was like a kid, like maybe a few years older than me. I sat down at dinner and like, everyone's reading these attitude checks, which are these anonymous positive and negatives on, everybody else that you throw in a jar. And this guy sits down, this older man sits down at the table. And all of a sudden out of nowhere, he's like, you're a fucking cocksucker. You're full of shit, and just starts like yelling at people. And I'm like, where the fuck am I? Like, what is going on right now? So what was kind of drummed in my head at the time was if you can get through this sober living, then you're way ahead of the game. Like you have more recovery than the people who just go to AA. And granted, I did learn a lot about willingness, and I learned about staying no matter what. And I learned about, my behavior and not trusting my thinking and all that stuff like that. But I mean, I don't think that you really actually can get ahead of what people do. I mean, people are on their own path or on their own track, and really time does not really mean much in that sense. So we all learn our lessons in our due time. So anyway, I, got out of that sober living. I worked the steps with a sponsor while I was there. And because I kind of had the arrogance of like, okay, cool, I went through this hardcore thing and I know everything now. I basically, started collecting time, but also started really living in defect, So my response to living in defect was like, oh, well, I guess I need to work the steps again. I need to do another inventory. And like, that was kind of what I thought I needed to do, because if I do another inventory, then I can manage my defects better this time. And, so I tried that. Of course, that didn't work because that's not how it works. And around 5.5 years sober, I got to a place where I was so depressed and so judgmental of not changing in the amount of time that I thought I needed to change, that I just wanted to die. Now, the mental obsession had been lifted from me in the sense that I thought that I could drink or use and it would work for me. I definitely did not have that at all. So my mind goes straight to, well, you got to kill yourself, because you're hopeless. So that was kind of my solution at that time. So I tried, and I wound up getting picked up by the fire department from my house. And, the police came and they handcuffed me to a gurney, which was, the first time I had been in handcuffs in sobriety, which was very exciting. And I had to sit in jail, and then they transferred me to Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital in Watts, which is like the worst mental facility I could think of. I was just really surrounded by people who were, not functional. And I stayed there for a 72-hour hold, and I met with the psychiatrist on staff, and he basically released me and put me on antidepressants and, did the deal. And then, I did the antidepressant thing for a while, got another sponsor, worked the steps again. I didn't like the way the antidepressants felt for me personally. I felt like I was, not who I was. And so I got off those, and I thought the steps were going to help me again. Didn't. And I wound up wanting to kill myself again. But this time I checked myself back into the sober living that I graduated from 6.5 years before. And so I went through that same sort of attack therapy thing. And I did that for about 3 weeks, and then realized that I'm just hiding off my life there. I'm not really, this is not beneficial to me. And it actually wasn't beneficial to the house because I was pretty combative at that time. So I got out and, floundered around Alcoholics Anonymous for a while, worked the steps again and again, and actually went to Nicotine Anonymous. And that's kind of actually where I picked up a new version of a higher power, which is the wonderful thing about this program, is that we get to create our own version of a higher power. And it was the first time that I heard the message of self-love and a loving power. I didn't, the AA and the sober living vibe that I sort of was brought up in early sobriety was much more of like a shaming, judging, you're fucking up, Michaelis, kind of a thing. So Nicotine Anonymous was really loving. And actually, this lady, Carrie White, she was really helpful to me because she helped me right after I tried to kill myself the second time. And she said to me, well, of course you want to kill yourself because you're making that decision to try to kill yourself every 5 minutes with a cigarette. So why would you think any differently if those are your actions? And I was like, oh, so I just really saw smoking as like something that I was doing that was, adding to, or an action of depression. So anyway, I wound up letting that go. And I still was not really feeling the spiritual experience that I heard people talk about. And I was still that guy who was going to meetings and hearing people with much less time than me, because at the time I had around 7 or 8 years. These kids were sharing about the promises happening for them. And I was like literally one of those guys in the back of the room who was like, fuck you and fuck your promises. Like, where are my promises? And that's really how I was feeling. Mm-hmm. So at around 9.5 years sobriety, it was kind of like my last ditch effort. I reached out to this other guy to be a sponsor of mine. And, he basically said no, but he said, I have this guy that really knows his shit. So I'm going to give you his number. His name is Deezer D. And I was like,
Deezer D.
Oh, yeah, Deezer D. And I was like, what kind of fucking name is Deezer D? But his actual name is Daron Thompson. But yeah, Deezer D. So he was awesome. I showed up at his house. He told me to come and show up at Tuesday morning at 8:00 in the morning. I showed up and he introduced me to this process through the big book. And, I'd probably worked with, I don't know, 4 or 5 other sponsors prior to this and did variations of the steps. I did the Big Book Awakenings. I did excerpts of the Big Book mixed with the 12 and 12. I did just 12 and 12. I did workbooks. I did all kinds of different versions of the steps, but nothing that was kind of like this. And what Deezer told me was that this process was something that had been passed down by the first 100 people once the book was written. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to give this a shot 100%, because if this doesn't work, then I'm done. I'm out, And the first thing that we wrote in the book was, God, take away everything I think I know about this book, about this process, and about you, God, so that I can have an experience with you. And really what that meant to me was like, okay, I've got 9.5 years sober and it doesn't mean shit. Everything that I've learned in AA at this point, I need to completely toss out, because I really want to have an experience with God, and that was like what I really loved about that prayer, is because it talked about that, because that's what I really felt like I was missing. I didn't really understand that. And then that was when the program was actually explained to me. It was explained to me that I had a 3-part disease, a disease of the body, a mind, and the spirit. Basically, the body said that if I put any drugs or alcohol in my body, the physical allergy gets triggered. I have a craving, which, basically eliminates any possibility of control over drugs and alcohol and how much I take. And that's that. That I have a mental obsession, and it was redefined. Like, I thought mental obsession is like I'm thinking about drinking and using all the time, but it's not that. And the truth is that even when I was getting high, that wasn't my experience, because I was high all the time. I didn't have to think about it, So the way the mental obsession was defined to me through the big book was it's the ability to believe a lie. And the lie that I believe is that I don't have the physical allergy. That was essentially what the end game lie is. And then all the lies that lead up to that, are what I need to work on in sobriety. And those lies can be as simple as, going to a meeting and seeing a friend of mine and like waving hi to him and him not seeing me, but me not knowing he didn't see me, and like thinking like, what the fuck? What did I do that guy? Like, what, he doesn't like me anymore? And then 45 minutes later, the meeting's over and I fucking hate the guy and I just storm out and I never go back to that meeting again. Like those kind of lies, like just throughout the day. Like we do that shit all the time. We're constantly writing stories in our head. So that was the mental obsession. And then the spiritual malady is, the depression, the anxiety, the fear, the worry, the feeling lost, the feeling not a part of this world, the feeling like, everybody got a manual about how to be an adult, but God was like, fuck you, Michaelis, you have to figure this shit out on your own. The feeling just not a part of or connected to anything. And I definitely related to that. And I definitely felt that in sobriety. Now, I also realized over time that spiritual malady is not really alcoholism. It's the human condition, but that's what our mental obsession uses to justify having that drink or drug, and even the mental obsession on the broad spectrum is not necessarily just alcoholism, right? The mental obsession around the drink, thinking that I don't have the physical allergy, that is alcoholism. But people lie to themselves all the fucking time. Just like people experience spiritual malady, people experience depression, anxiety, fear, worry, jealousy, anger, all that stuff. The physical allergy is really what defines me as an alcoholic and a drug addict, because without that, I'm just not, right? Now, what was explained to me is how to actually treat those things. And that was really the eye-opening thing for me, right? So basically how I treat the body is through the unity, and unity is found in the fellowship. So what that means and how it was explained to me is that when I'm hanging out with other sober people, I'm not getting high and drunk because I'm not at the dealer's house. I'm not at my home isolating, getting high and drunk. I'm not in the crack motel smoking crack with some crack people doing crack things. I'm not actually physically putting drugs or alcohol in my body. So when I'm at a meeting, you're not offering me drugs and alcohol. When I'm hanging out with you before and after meetings, you're not offering me drugs and alcohol. So I'm not physically putting my body in a situation to trigger the physical allergy. Then I learned that the mental obsession is treated through the first 164 pages of the big book, because that's actually where the recovery is found. Now, I was told that recovery is found in the meetings, or I'm going to meetings to connect, but no. Recovery is actually not necessarily found in meetings. And that was another revelation for me. I can't depend on meetings to give me recovery. I can depend on meetings to basically treat the physical allergy. And then what I'll talk about later is to find people to work with. So the mental obsession is treated with the book. So that means I need to be in the book more than just with my sponsor, because that means that if I'm going to meetings 7 days a week, I'm treating my body and I'm staying physically sober. But if I'm only meeting my sponsor once a week in the book, then I'm insane the other 6 days of the week, and that's not the kind of sobriety I want. And if I'm not helping anybody, and we'll get to that right now. So the way that I basically treat my spirit, the spiritual malady, and the way that I connect to God, the way that I perfect and enlarge my spiritual life is through service. Now, service is a broad word. Service is being loving and kind to a bunch of people. Service is saying hello to the person who's pumping your gas at the gas station. Service is doing charity work. Service is all kinds of different stuff. But the most efficient way for me as an alcoholic or an addict to be of service is to basically take as many people through the big book as I possibly can. So the reason why that's the most efficient is that in taking people through the book, I'm working all three sides of the triangle simultaneously, right? So I'm going to meetings to find people to take through the book. And when I'm taking someone through the book, I'm sitting across from another alcoholic. So I'm treating my body. I'm in the book, so I'm treating my mind. And I'm trying to be of service to them. So I'm treating my spirit, right? I'm connecting to the power of God through that, So that's basically changed, how I approached Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I think the message that I was brought up with is, our public relations based on attraction rather than promotion, right? That's what people use. And I thought, okay, cool. Well, I need to be attractive enough and just sit back and wait for people to be like, oh, Michaelis, I want what you have, But fuck, man, I was miserable. There was nothing attractive about me. I was a mess with years of sobriety. Maybe people wanted that time, but I was a total mess. But what people don't understand is that is our public relations. not our relations within Alcoholics
Oh,
Anonymous. That's like the common misconception, right?
totally.
So when I started reading the history of Alcoholics Anonymous in the forward of the first edition, the forward of the second edition, and really seeing how the founders of AA did this, they were proactive as fuck. They were like going out and looking for people. They were going to the detoxes. They were, going to the bars. They were literally trying to find people to work with because they knew that that's what they needed to do. That's how they matched calamity in their lives with serenity. That's how they connect to God. So I became that dude. I became that guy who started going to more meetings. I knew I needed people to work with, right? I started going to fellowship with people, even though I didn't want to. I was tired of meetings at this point, But because I now had a purpose at the meetings, it erased my judgment. I no longer cared about how people were sharing or who was speaking and what they were saying. Like none of that mattered to me. I wasn't like being a dick about it anymore. I was just going there to find somebody to help. And so I made that like my mission. And I mean, we don't have enough time right now to even discuss how much growth has evolved for me over the past 11 years of literally dedicating my life to helping as many people as I possibly can. I mean, it does so much for me on so many levels. That can be a whole other discussion someday because I'm not sure how much time I have. How much time do I have, Nat?
I mean, I would just say like keep on rolling. Why not?
Keep on rolling. So,
Tell us about all
okay.
of these gifts.
So basically, every time that I worked with someone, I felt uplifted. And I felt uplifted because as I was working with them, I was treating myself as well, right? With that message and reading the book, So that was one thing that was different because there were times where I was sponsoring people before where I'd like take people's calls and like listen to them and fucking hear them complain and just be like, give them direction on what to do and them not doing it and then calling me again with the same fucking shit and be like, fuck, like what's the matter with you? So this like erased all that. This was just like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, let's just go through this book. You know what I mean? And if you're going to do it, cool. And if you're not going to do it, that's okay too. Because part of the thing that I tell people when I go through the book with them is, okay, and this is what my sponsor told me. He's like, we're going to go through the book on Tuesdays, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I want you to find someone to take through those pages that we just went through immediately, right? Because in doing so, A, you're going to be working all three sides of the triangle, and B, you're actually going to retain the information, right? You're going to get better at it. It's going to become your own process, your own way. So I did that. I followed his direction, In the first week, I only had 4 people, but by the end of the month, I was working with 14 people, right? So I had 2 people at least a day, and it just grew and grew from that. So what I also found was this is really how, when they say shit like turn it over, I was like, turn what the fuck over, let go and let God. How the fuck do you do that? Like, what does that even mean? But what it meant was like, okay, cool. There's something I can do that actually let God do its magic, right? So what that is that when life is hitting me and I'm feeling frustrated or I'm feeling afraid, and I definitely want to manage that situation to fix it so it becomes beneficial to what I want. No, I don't do that. What I do instead is I take someone through the book. And what that does is that it allows the universe the space to do that shit for me. And it always does. That's the beauty of this, So I've like let go of managing my life through that because I'm constantly in the book for people. To give you guys an example, right? Let's see. I came home I was at a club one night. I'm a DJ, right? Or I was a DJ. I was just about to DJ a club and I found out that my bank account was like drained to zero, right? And I had just gotten a huge check from NASCAR because I was a touring DJ for them for about 4 or 5 years. And I was supposed to leave for the States because I was living in Bali at the time to go and DJ for them, I think in a week and a half later. And I was supposed to use some of that money to obviously buy the plane ticket and do all that stuff. And now my account is at zero. And I'm like, what the fuck, right? So anyway, I DJs this club. I'm literally in my mind thinking like, what the fuck is going on? And I get out and I find out that it's like a tax lien from something that I forgot to pay in like 2015 or something or whatever. So I get home, and instead of getting distressed about it, I get a call, and it's like 3:30 a.m. But I get a call from someone who's in America that I'm doing the book with, who I forgot that I had set up a session with, and I do book work with her. And the session is all about like faith and being taken care of and connection to God and blah, 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 blah. And by the end of that conversation, I'm in a completely different space, you know? And because of that, like the conversation that I had with the IRS after that was not panic. It was not desperate. It was not like trying to manipulate an outcome. It was just like honest and calm. And they wound up just refunding the money to me because they made a mistake. You know what I mean? And it was all good. Like that kind of stuff, you know, just everything just working out. The other thing is that, you know, they talk about heaven on earth being, you know, in the fourth dimension of existence, right? And the fourth dimension existence is really when space meets time, which is the absolute present. So heaven is in the absolute now. And one of the things I do to launch myself in the now is to have a purpose in every now that's presented to me. And that purpose is simple: being the blessing, helping another, you know? And so that practice I see, so taking people through the book is like the training wheels of the bigger picture, which is basically, okay, cool. My purpose, my divine purpose on this earth is to be a blessing in each moment that presents itself to me. Right. But that goes against the human condition, which is essentially like self-repulsion, selfishness, self-centeredness. I got to take care of me. I got to get mine. And really letting that go and just think, how can I bless you? How can I serve you? You know? And because of that, and because of, you know, spending so much time in the present and practicing being in the moment through that, I get to see so many gifts and so many blessings in my life. And I get to see all the opportunities that come my way, you know? And also I just have the courage today to literally do whatever the fuck I want on this earth, you know? And I did not have that before. You know, I moved to a tropical island because I decided that I wanted to live in a tropical island. I didn't know anybody here. I didn't know if my career as a DJ was going to translate over here. I didn't know what the fuck was going to go on. And I blew up. NASCAR blew up. I had charting songs, like all that stuff just worked out. Everything just happens perfectly. And then I decided like a few months ago, I don't want to DJ anymore. So I wrote a book, you know, and I have complete faith that that thing is going to take off because it's essentially, you know, a book that's going to help anyone who's not an addict or an alcoholic work on their own spiritual malady, you know, and find their own peace within themselves. And it's a workbook, just like the big book is. So, I mean, that's the beauty of life. Like, I just don't see any limitations anymore. And yeah, I think I'll end there because, you know, that's really the beauty of this process, is just living a limitless life. It's awesome. So,
Yay.
cool.
Thank you for sharing. Well, I was thinking about like, okay, well, what's different now? So you started to talk about, you know, what happened in the beginning, and you're talking about like the broad stroke promises that have come true. You know, you talked about wanting to kill yourself, trying to kill yourself. So like, have you had anything like that since you started the book work with people 11 years ago?
No, like, and I've had, look, my life did not get completely drama free just because I started the book work, but my ability to walk through everything completely changed. I have not dipped into any sort of deep depression since I've started this process. You know, actually, I have had a fear of dying for the first time in my life. And that's only because I fucking love my life so much, you know, that, and it's funny for me to say, like, if anyone who knows me from the past, like, I used to just wish to die. I used to, like, you know, drive around in my car and just be like, God, just fucking take me now. You know, I'm fucking tired of this. And today it's like, I'm the total opposite. Like, I really want to be alive. I really want to see this book through. I want to see, you know, I just want to help as many people as I possibly can, you know? So that's the beauty of it too. It's like, I haven't been on any medication, like the depression, the ADHD, all the things that I was diagnosed with basically have just disappeared and been treated through this process. you know? So it's much bigger than I could have ever imagined, you know? So, yeah.
Well, thank you for your commitment, your example, and your willingness. And, what I see is just like somebody who was managing, and that's okay. Like, you did the best you could, but then when given this solution, it's just like the fourth dimension, you know, no more like managing and controlling and making it through and trudging like that. So, yeah, thank you for your stand and your willingness to be of service, because that's how I'm here with you right now.
Yeah. And honestly, like anyone can have this. Like I'm not special, you know, like that's the thing. I mean, this is for everybody, especially in AA, and soon it will be for everybody in the world, like, because my book will help that. But yeah, I mean, you know, anyone can do this, anyone can have this life. And I mean, like the life where, you know, there's just endless possibilities and you feel almost like you're walking on this earth with the huge safety net underneath you, giving you the courage to take whatever leaps of faith that you need to, you know, realize any dreams that you have, which is awesome, you know?
Well, I love that you said that, and I think it's like anyone can have it, but is everyone willing to go to any lengths, willing to have this, to do the strenuous work when it's inconvenient, when we don't want to help as many people as we possibly can. I think that's kind of the whatever, the threshold or the thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that that boils down to fear, right? Because people think that if they, you know, give up managing or being in control of their stuff, that everything's going to fall apart, you know? So it, you just have to practice it. And the thing is that what I'm talking about practicing is so simple. You just sit across from someone and read a book that was already written, you know, and there's certain things that you talk about that are underlined and highlighted, little prayers and things that we write in there. But I mean, that's it, you know? And if you just start with 1 hour a day, I mean, really, what is that? That's nothing, you know? But it will feel good and it will motivate you to do more. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not asking you to, like, I don't know, jump through a fire ring, roll around in alcohol and be weird shit, you know? So simple.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michaelis, for being our first guest and,
Thanks for
well,
having me.
slash co-host. Um, so thanks everybody for tuning in. And next week I will
It's
share my
Natalie's
own.
turn. We're doing it. We're getting raw.
I'll
Got a
share
good
my
story.
own experience with this process. And it's very weird. We have so many similarities. We both got sober at 22. I wish I would have found this process 11 years ago, but whatever. I found it exactly when I needed to, which has been just a couple, but still. Yeah. And the whole like sober living thing, I have my own similar experience with that too, but I'll save it for next time. So, y'all tune in next time for our next
That's right.
episode. And you guys can find us on social media. We'll post that wherever we're posting this podcast so you can
We have
find
no idea
us.
what we're doing. It's so good, right? It's so good.
Yeah, but I have a website, and Michaelis has whatever he has.
I ain't got nothing. What's up? I'm like totally unprofessional. It's great.
Yeah. So anyway, you can reach out for more information, and see you guys next time.
See
All
ya.
right. Bye
Thanks.
bye.